Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and this fine-looking gentleman sitting to my left, right, whichever direction it is, my colleague, my cohort, my friend. A happy new year to Mr. Father Time himself. Yeah, you're still hanging around the old dude, Mr. Brian E. Roach. It's not the baby. Flash will be back at some point, but for right now, you know, we're stuck on the little combo shows. Brian, this schedule has just been wild. Saturday games, Thursday games, everything this whole December on through the end of the football season, which we're practically at the end here. But first, Happy New Year to you, my friend. How you doing?
I'm still looking for the attractive person that you said was in here. I'm like, where's the other person in the meeting? Because you're not, I'm not. So that rules out attractive people immediately.
Look over your shoulder. 75 is right there.
Well, that's a grown-ass man. That's definitely a grown-ass man. In fact, there's 4 grown-ass men sitting right there.
Yeah, there's another one directly over your right shoulder as well, number 95.
Yeah, Mr. Lloyd.
Yeah, Mr. Lloyd. We get a new camera angle every time we come and visit you. It seems
notice that the curtain is too short.
I've noticed that.
So I ordered the correct length, but they sent me a short curtain. They short curtained me, those bastards. And so now I'm going to end up having 2 sets of curtains because they're like, don't bother sending them back. We don't care. Keep those. You can use them on a different window. So now I'm going to have two curtains, one that's too short and I can't use for anything and is just dumb. And then one that will actually cover that area back there.
Interesting enough. The old storage closet. Well, we've got, like I said, a little bit of a combo show here. It was like, and we bump into all these holidays for post game, and I haven't been able to praise Mason Rudolph after any of these. So let's hope that next Monday, after a Saturday game, I can maybe have the privilege of doing so as they head into Baltimore. M&T Bank Stadium, a 4:30 game, I believe.
4. I thought 4.
4 o'clock. Let me look at that real quickly. Strictly quickly, because it was one of these to be determined. 4:30 Eastern, ABC and ESPN, if you're looking for it out there, folks. But first, we should probably talk about what happened. We in Seattle kind of went down the way we were saying. You are on, okay, I just watched Home Alone last night. You are literally Fuller, lay off the Pepsi, although it's probably not Pepsi.
No, it's not. It's the high quality Polar seltzer water.
Polar salt. I've never heard of that in my life. That's
go to the grocery store once, man.
I go. Who do you think shops for my groceries? I would starve. You forget,
you do that Uber Eats thing.
No. That's where me and Flash differ. And I'm just letting everybody know that, Zach will be back. I was in contact with him, but our schedules are all over the place, holidays and that. He was just dressed up for a wedding. You saw him on the X, formerly known as Twitter. So I know he's got a lot of things to say. In fact, one of them was pretty fun.
Nice coat too. I saw he had a nice winter coat that was very, very attractive.
Actually, this was pretty funny because right now we've got just within the breaking news, we know Lamar Jackson is not going to be playing Saturday. That's pretty big for the Steelers and their hope for the playoff scenarios, which we'll go through. But Flash is always active there on the X. Don't lump these losers in with Mason. You got confirmed week 18 starters so far: Blaine Gabbert, Jeff Driscoll, Carson Wentz, Nick Mullins, Trevor Siemian, Easton Stick, Tyrod Taylor, Sam Howell, and Jarrett Stidham. Woo! Man.
Wait, Easton Stick, isn't that just is that a bat that you use in stickball? Isn't Easton the bat company? It's Easton Stick.
Quarterback and I don't know about the other part.
Those are professional stickball equipment to me.
It's called a Louisville Slugger.
Well, yeah, but there's an aluminum bat. Isn't that what Easton makes those aluminum bats?
Maybe, dude. I don't know. You're talking to the wrong guy here. I'm not I think
I got me one around here. In case people come and try and get my helmets, I just get my aluminum bat out and beat their head in.
Are you kidding me? You probably wear it with your Steelers boxers, and you go outside and you yell for kids to get off your yard.
I not that you want to know this, and since we already started the show over again because I gave you too much information once before, I don't have boxers. I have boxer briefs.
Ooh, okay. For those inquiring minds that needed to know, let's jump back in time here to last Sunday, New Year's Eve, the later slate, not the latest game, but the later slate. Did you have this on your bingo card for this year for the Steelers? I mean, the season's almost over now. You've got an extra week of football with all those glamorous quarterbacks, by the way. A lot of good Goodell, Wade, you got the divisional matchups. You try to make these games more important, and then you've got, Blaine Gabbert out there. Now, Mason Rudolph is a product of some other things that are going on. And number one was, you wanted him to start after a good showing against the Bengals. 30-plus points. It was like 2 touchdown passes. It was like, hey, finally, you know what? The Steelers, they might have a good thing going on here. And so he got the start, but in the aftermath of all of this, we're now hearing from he's like another he who shall not be mentioned, double M, Mark Madden, reporting that
giant tool,
Kenny Pickett, did not want to back up. Do you believe that at all? Did not want to back up? Or do you believe what Mike Tomlin and all the so-called paid off Steelers writers? I'd like to know where this money is. Where's the pool of money to pay us to just toe the company line? Because it doesn't seem like that would be in Kenny's demeanor to be like, nope, I'm not going to be a backup. I do believe we were even talking about shutting him down for the season before there was any success with Mason Rudolph whatsoever, because it was like, hey, these guys could be out of it, and what's the point of playing them? You have this hodgepodge offensive coordinator group right now. It's Eddie Faulkner with Mike Sullivan calling the plays. You had Matt Canada basically kind of possibly ruin, or, you're derailing this kid's second year in the NFL. It's the not for long league. You got to show me something and show me something quick. And you go from, he has one game, Steelers finally have over 400 yards of offense, and then he gets hurt. Then you have Mitch Trubisky, who can't hit the broadside of a barn. And all of a sudden, Mason Rudolph comes in there, and this offense looks like the offense we were promised in the preseason. George Pickens looks like prime Randy Moss. You have Deontay Johnson out there juking people. You have not only Najee Harris, but also Jalen Warren in the angry runs segments, with Najee getting the scepter once again and just mowing people down. Najee just could not be denied. And we said that the Seahawks were going to be poor against the run, and that was kind of the Steelers' keys to victory. And boy, was it a key to victory. 46 carries combined across everyone. Now, Mason had some kneel downs, 6 carries for 5 yards, but otherwise 202 yards, 4.4 an attempt. We said the running backs usually had to get at least fed 25 times. Najee had 27 by himself for $122, season high, 2 touchdowns. Jalen Warren got a touchdown as well, 13 for 75. He also was very close to topping 100 yards from scrimmage, 4 for 23 is on the receiving stat line. Only 4 guys caught passes in this game. Pickens had 7 of them, 131 yards. Deontay Johnson had 4 for 76. Freiermuth, 3 for 44, moved the stick some. That was it. Not a whole lot of spreading the wealth around. Wasn't needed. Mason only had 24 attempts, completed 75% of them, 274 yards, no touchdowns in the air, no interceptions, a 112 rating, and overall, after just 2 starts now, has the highest quarterback rating in the NFL. I don't know that he's among qualified people, but it is good.
Come on, he's going to make the Pro Bowl. Just like somebody else did a couple years ago when he was a backup.
Oh yeah, that's going to be Snoop Huntley, who the Steelers are going to end up facing, Pro Bowler on Saturday. Now the Steelers do get the short end of this. They have a shorter week and have to travel on the road after having already been on the West Coast, but this is must-win territory. But another 30 points for the Steelers, practically all on offense. Some other game balls maybe to go out. Nick Herbig.
Yep.
I said, you'd never believe this, but Brian, I was about to text. I saw Herbig come in the game, and I said, watch out. This tackle isn't going to know what hit him. And lo and behold, it just right around him, and that was it. Strip sack on Geno Smith, and that kind of sealed the deal. It was very good. I would say overall, play calling, coaching by the Steelers. The defense still suspect. They only gave up 88 yards on the ground. They gave up a lot to Geno Smith, who completed nearly 70% of his passes, 290 yards, and a touchdown. But that receiving core, DK Metcalf, grown-ass man, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba, who also had a TD or had the lone TD for the Seahawks. We're looking at Snoop Huntley going forward, and I'm just trying to think. I'm going to see how many other players that the Ravens end up sitting, because they've already locked down the number 1 seed. They don't have to put anybody at risk. They very well could, because the Steelers are going to be hungry. They're going to come with their full complement of everybody that they have left.
Yep.
And try and come out of this, because basically you have to win. Now, there's still a scenario where they lose. And then what? Denver has to win and Jacksonville has to lose. And then the Texans and Colts don't end in a tie. That's the most convoluted one if they lose. But if they win, you're basically rooting for the Miami Dolphins, the Tennessee Titans, I believe. And you got to have one of those scenarios, basically, where the Bills or the
problematic one, I think, is the Titans. I
don't see it.
I don't see the Titans beating the Jaguars, but hey, stranger things have happened. And I think it's an important game for the Jaguars too, right? They need the win to clinch the division. So I don't know. Seems unlikely. But let's putting all that aside. First of all, I'm still completely confused about what the playoff scenarios are, because I have now read at least 57 different things that indicate that this is absolutely what must happen. And then I read something else and it doesn't seem like it's the same. I don't know what they got to do. I know they got to win and other people have to do stuff. So hopefully they will. Hope the key, starting with the win. Now, I just want to go back. I did not think that we would see what we saw in Seattle. First of all, under no circumstances did I expect the offense to come out and put up 30 points again. I worried about the fact that it was a West Coast trip. I worried about the fact that they never win in Seattle. And I'm thrilled to have been incorrect, right? I'm going to stand here and tell you that, and this is going to be scary because everybody knows my opinion on Mason, which is not that he's bad, it's that he's a backup. But right now, this is Mason's team. It's not Kenny's team. This is Mason's team for the rest of this season, however long this season lasts, until he screws it up. If he screws it up, and I'm hoping that he never does. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He has, in the 2 games he's played, he has looked better than any starter that has played a game for the Steelers in the last 2 seasons, including Kenny. Well, I mean, come on, my left butt cheek could look better than Mitch Trubisky. It's Mason's team, right? This is Mason's season to lose out, and he's playing better than I've seen him play in the past. Like, this is better than even when he was playing well, right? Before he got knocked out by what's his face, with the Ravens.
Agreed.
Game. He didn't look this good.
No.
Now, admittedly, he didn't have the weapons that he's got now.
No.
But he is seemingly, and again, whether it's what Tomlin has said in that his demeanor is simply more aggressive, and Kenny's maybe more of a game manager and less willing to take risks. Mason spent all those years with Ben, and I'm not saying that they talked much, and we all know that apparently their relationship wasn't great, whether you want to believe what Ben said during the game and that it's that he wanted to help Mason and Mason said, no, I don't want your help, or how Mason says, oh, nobody was helpful I don't know. I don't care. Doesn't matter. That's all water under the bridge, right? But he is more of a gunslinger than anybody else on this team right now, and is willing to put the ball down the field, is willing to take risks, is willing to do things that Ben used to do, right? Put the ball someplace and let your playmakers make a play, right? And the difference right now is he's got some guys who can make plays, specifically, one George Pickens, who has had stellar games two weeks in a row. You've got guys who can run the ball right now. This week will definitely, depending on who the Ravens choose to play and not play, this is going to be a bigger challenge for them to run the ball. They ran the ball effectively the last time they played, but they weren't popping them for 200 yards either. it'll be a much more difficult run situation than it was last week. But nonetheless, if they can consistently move the ball that way and Mason can stay aggressive down the field and not make mistakes, I don't actually even care that Lamar's not playing or not playing. If those things could happen, they can beat the Ravens. They already did it once.
Yeah, with Kenny and let me see. I wanted to look at that game specifically because it was a low-scoring affair as usual with the AFC North.
Yeah.
You had
that Bengals game.
not the last two. Who would like seriously though? You know how bullish I've been on Mason. Hadn't had his chance. I never felt that he was really all that bad of a player. You saw him in camp. There was a lot of kicking the tires about bringing him back. QB3 knows the offense. Oh, come in an emergency. And I still was like, man, why can't this guy just be like the backup? And it really sucks too, because if Tomlin pulls this trigger a little bit faster against the Colts, that Colts game might be entirely different. That is the thing that's keeping them out. They would have 10 wins right now. And losing this game might still affect them, but they would have that tiebreaker over Indianapolis. And now they don't have a tiebreaker against the Texans or the Colts. So they really do have to win. And let's put it this way. When a team's playing as well as Baltimore has been playing, we've seen backups. We've seen the Steelers rest players and beat teams. I remember the RG3 Cleveland Browns coming to Pittsburgh and getting beat by Landry Jones in overtime. We've seen the Steelers have to hope for, Niall Davis at running back and Chase Daniel at quarterback with the Kansas City Chiefs against the then San Diego Chargers. And that game got blown, but nearly happened. They nearly beat the Chargers with their backups. So you could never take any of this for granted, but the Steelers are playing a lot of their backups too, is why you can't take it for granted. We still don't know 100%, I think, participation as far as Landon Roberts, as far as Micah Fitzpatrick, which would be a great help. You've gotten some all hands on deck type of participation, such as Patrick Peterson playing safety, who now says, according to Mark Cabulli of The Athletic, that he is enjoying playing that and could see a future playing in that position, which would be nice because they're going to be looking for someone. And Eric Rowe has stepped up. Now, he's been maybe a liability in spots, pass defense and stuff like that. But the dude was a tackling machine. He's been out there for a lot of snaps recently. Trenton Thompson, who was one of the fill-ins, he was limited this week. I mean, you still had the DMPs, as I said. Landon Roberts would be huge as one of the inside linebackers and play callers, so they really need him. On Baltimore's side, you look at all the players that who else could be sitting? You don't want to risk Lamar Jackson, who's having perhaps, dare I say, I kind of like vomit in my mouth at all the MVP talk, but he's having a good season. How could you deny that, right? You don't want to risk that if you're the Ravens and you have this golden opportunity handed to you to have a home playoff game and a bye. And then, they've been pounding everybody. So it's kind of like, would they pound the Steelers? The Steelers were, I'm going to say, probably built better to stop Lamar and that offense. Now they've lost some of those guys like Cole Holcomb and Quan Alexander and Keanu O'Neal and DeMonte Casey and et cetera, right? But some of the players that they've had that are hurt, Zay Flowers, would be able to do damage probably still with Tyler Huntley. Tremendous rookie. I remember I was very upset that Flowers ended up going to the Ravens. Kyle Hamilton, very good safety. If he's out, Marlon Humphrey, as we know, a standout, although Kenny caught him off guard with George Pickens. That was part of that big win in week 5. Arthur Mallette, former Steeler, who ends up going over to the Ravens. I hate hearing his name being called over there. They're using him very similarly to the way the Bengals are using Mike Hilton, and it just makes me angry in every case, but Steelers don't like the blitz anyway, so apparently. Patrick Queen's been banged up. Brandon Stevens has been hurt for a few weeks. Kevin Zeitler, one of their guards, is another guy that they may opt to rest for a couple of weeks and get everybody full participation when they get, 2 weeks of rest. That's a lot of time off, and there was speculation because the last time they got the brakes beat off of them by Derrick Henry and the Tennessee Titans in the playoffs when they rested some players, so there's some speculation as to who does and who doesn't. But we've seen this with the Steelers before. It was actually one of Mason's last starts, and they allowed the Cleveland Browns to sneak in. And all of a sudden, it was like, if the Steelers would have just played their starters, they would have had like TJ Watt on the field, for example. But no, it didn't happen like that. Mason threw for over 300 yards. So it was one of the reasons I had confidence in him. So it's one of the reasons I have some confidence that the Steelers can't control their own destiny here, because I could see that's a number of impact players. Your Kyle Hamiltons, your Zay Flowers, your Lamar Jacksons, your Marlon Humphrey. You take those guys out of the equation, and please and thank you, Santa, late Christmas gift. Let Roquan Smith sit too, because Roquan is the whole reason last year when they made that trade that this defense turned around. Otherwise, they give up leads late. They were leaving all kinds of plays all over the field. So please and thank you. Sit Roquan Smith for us too. Harbaugh, can you hear me over there? Put down the Utz crab chips and sit Roquan Smith. That would make me happy. So
yeah. I do want to say they can't control their own destiny under any circumstances.
Well, true.
What they can control is whether they can win this game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they can do that. Like I said, I mean, it's first, they are built to play against the Ravens, and designed to win within their division, right? You know, the odd man out in this division is really the Bengals. The Bengals are they're no longer AFC football. Or AFC North football. You know, they're not that grinded out, tough, you know, physical brand of football. The Browns are, the Ravens are, the Steelers are. And they're all designed to beat up on each other. And that's why every time we have an AFC North game, I throw my hands in the air and I go, it's AFC North football. Who the hell knows what could happen, right? Because, you know, what are the Ravens? 13-3 or something like that?
Yeah.
You know, there's under no circumstances should this team be competitive with a 13-3 team, right? They should get whooped. They won't. Probably they won't get whooped. They may lose, but it'll probably be a close game. Why? Because AFC North football. You know, there's no predicting how it goes with these kind of games. But the good news is there's absolutely every reason to think they can pull this off. Forget who's sitting, forget who's not. If it was a full complement, that's who they're designed to beat, right? That's the teams they're designed to be competitive with. They were competitive. I know Lamar throws interceptions. Everybody dropped the ball. Nobody could catch anything in the first game. I get it. But again, it's AFC North football, and you never know what's gonna happen. You just don't see these games turn into blowouts very often at all. And if it's close, anything can happen.
Yeah.
I'm glad it's a Saturday game, to be honest with you. I didn't want it to be a Sunday game. I wanted it to be a Saturday game.
Why?
I wanted to know whether I had to care to watch any games on Saturday or Sunday.
Well, and no, that just screws with my whole day, to be completely honest. Okay. My daughter's in 2 different sports and they play on Saturdays. It's like, come on, guys, really? I mean, it makes it at least accessible for anyone who wants to travel and maybe go to that game in Baltimore. It's not, you know, a Sunday trip, but
my friend, that sounds like a you issue.
Yeah, it might be. No, it's a lot of everybody's issues. Like all the kids are in sports. Everything's ramping up after the new year, and it's just like, come on, man.
I don't know
really?
what you're talking about. Don't have those kind of problems anymore.
I understand what happens though is the way they have to structure the schedule, because there's other games depend on other games. So like most of these teams are watching to see if the Steelers do win or whatever, but it doesn't largely impact as much. The Steelers, they control more of their destiny by winning, right? There's still that outside chance. One of the things so a couple of things. One, in this first game, Steelers were down 10-0 going into halftime and then scored 17 unanswered. Several Chris Boswell field goals. We mentioned the George Pickens touchdown. That was that go-ahead. There was also a punt blocked for a safety in this game, if you remember that as well. So special teams very much so. Especially when you're talking about Boswell and Tucker. We've been talking about Presley Harvin for too long with this stuff too, and it was we figured out how to resolve that issue, right? Just never punt. That's what exactly happened in Seattle. I think he punted like once. Yeah. So he got off. He usually is good for one good punt a game. He had one good punt because it was the only punt he had. Yeah, like 46 yards. That's the way you keep Presley Harvin on your roster, and nobody ever complains about him. Don't let him punt. Yeah, don't let him punt. That's been the big difference. I was talking with Thomas in Maine, was sending some emails over. I'll give you a shout out. He listens to the show quite a bit. He sent me something before the holidays talking, liked my analysis. I talked about all the stuff with Mason. You didn't have to do all these big flashy. You didn't need 300, 400 yards. You didn't need 3-4 touchdowns. Just needed, he's not even really game managing either, Brian. He has like, 500, 527, 560. Hold on. How many yards does he have
aggressive.
already?
He's taking risks.
Yeah. 567 in 2 games. It reminds me, dare I say this? It reminds me of Joe Flacco. Because Amari Cooper all of a sudden came out and he's been a threat, right? I know Flacco's turning the ball over a lot more, but it's because they've now thrown the ball that everybody just doesn't stack up on the run. You saw what Denver did to the Cleveland Browns, and then Flacco goes in there and he throws the ball around and can actually complete, move the chains. That's something that Rudolph's doing. You're getting time of possession. The defense isn't getting too tired, and guys aren't dropping like flies. There's a lot of parallels with that across the entire AFC North, by the way. And is it any surprise, though, that Baltimore 13 wins, 13-3, because they're one of the few teams that actually has their quarterback healthy for the full year? And that was like, I got really irritated with this. Nobody wanted Lamar. Washington, Carolina. Oh, they made him up for trade. They franchise tagged him because he wanted this fully guaranteed Deshaun Watson deal that all the owners hate and they don't want to replicate. And then this dude hadn't been healthy the previous 2 seasons. There was talk about whether or not he was last year or not, or he just quit on his team. So
look,
that bothers me.
Regardless, forget the success that Lamar's had, and I'm willing to say he's playing at an MVP level and he's doing great. Sure, but forget the success that he's had on a team that's built around him, right? If you're the Washington Commanders, or you are the Tennessee Titans, or you're any of the teams that was quarterback desperate and potentially in the mix for Lamar, are you looking at a give up 2 first-round draft picks, guaranteed contract, and still going to a guy at that point in time who your team is not designed around, right? You don't have the talent. You don't have the offensive line built for this guy. You don't have a schema built around him, so you're starting from scratch. All of those things would be true. It has nothing to do with nobody wanted Lamar. It's nobody wanted to give up 2 first-round draft picks for a guy who had been injured for 2 seasons and who they would have to redesign their entire system around, right? It doesn't take anything away from Lamar. The price was just too steep.
And all the money, too, not to mention. And people are going to say, well, the Browns tripped over themselves for Deshaun Watson. Yeah, that was I dare I say the Browns.
How has that worked out?
It hasn't. You got another guy like Flacco. Maybe they were wrong on Watson. Maybe the Steelers were wrong on Pickett. And that's where I was like angling towards with the way Rudolph has made this look like the promises we were given in the preseason. Pat Freiermuth being a real capable tight end. George Pickens being this, dynamic second-year player, this great wide receiver, a run game. Now everybody can't stack the box. Mason can lob it down. You get some one-on-ones, and the safeties have to back off. And now all of a sudden you got Najee, as Kyle Brandt said on Good Morning Football, dribbling guys like a basketball, which I think he did that to Tariq Woolen, by the way, too. Yeah. So I'm going forward with the quarterback deal here. I think it's Mason the whole way. I mean, if Mason gets you to the playoffs, how do you not play him again? No matter how many points you score, you have to. And if he doesn't, he's already made a case for bringing him back next year. He had that 1-year deal.
Well, let's talk about that. Here's what's happened. Last year, when Mason went into free agency, the overwhelming crescendo was this.
Nothing.
Silence.
Right? Yes.
Silence. So when the Steelers said, yeah, we'll bring you back, it wasn't like Mason was like, yeah, I got all these other choices to do. That's it, right? So it's not that the Steelers were like, oh, we're so wrong about Mason Rudolph, and who knew he was going to be this good and look this good. Nobody thought that, right? Nobody thought that. Nobody was willing to take a risk on Mason Rudolph. These 2 games have put him in a different conversation when next year rolls around. If, in fact, he's bitter with the Steelers for how he was treated, there's nothing to prevent him from testing free agency again. And he will get phone calls this time. There's no question about it. He's looked very good. He's got 2 games under tape. If he pulls a Nick Foles and gets this team into a playoff run, he's going to make bank next year. And it ain't going to be with the Steelers because they're not going to pay him that kind of money to be a backup, and they're still going to let. I do want to address the Kenny cult and the not Kenny cult in a second.
Two different camps.
They're not going to give up on Kenny Pickett.
No,
or Pick whatever the hell his name is. Pickett.
KP.
Pickett. It's too confusing, and I'm tired. They're not going to give up on Kenny yet, right? There are concerns for those folks who are in the Kenny club, and you've drunk the Kenny Kool-Aid. There are concerns with Kenny Pickett. There's just are, right? You have to look at the difference in the way the offense has worked with him and without him, and understand that there are concerns. And forget Mitch Trubisky. He stinks. He's terrible. He's just not good. That's the guy who's not going to be back under any circumstances next year. Yeah, he needs to go bye-bye because they can save money, and he cannot take another snap for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let me cut into you on that. I know people that might be listening. I have scissors here. I'm doing the old Brutus the Barber beefcake wrestling thing here. Trim that roster. What I was going to say was, I don't know if the number of opportunities for Mason will be great, at least to start. He probably has a better chance coming back to Pittsburgh. He's already proven he could be a starter. They're not going to guarantee that to him. They do have a first-round pick invested in Kenny Pickett, but we said one of the things we liked when Kenny Pickett was drafted was they didn't give up anything else but that first-round pick to get Kenny Pickett.
Yes.
There was nothing. This isn't like the Bryce Young trade with the Carolina Panthers where you've put everything into it. Deshaun Watson where you put everything into it. But with the Kenny call, you're right. I've seen him regress. And I really for the longest time, a lot of my defense of him, obviously, he needs to get more experience. He needs to develop. He was thrown out there. I said, okay, it's Matt Canada. And he's only got one game without Matt Canada to really show, can he be more than a guy that's had 1-2 touchdown game? He said 24 starts. Mason Rudolph has had 12 and has 6 multiple touchdown games, half of his games with half as many played as a starter compared to Pickett. I mean, it's certainly something to question. You also look at who they learned under. For the longest time, folks were like, you got to draft somebody to develop and blah, 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 behind Ben. Hello, that's the guy that's in right now. That's why you're seeing some similarities of the decision-making, everything else. Maybe he marinated a little bit, kept the bacon in the oven long enough. He's under the learning tree, and now he's produced the fruit because he was under the tree of Ben Roethlisberger. Who was Kenny under? Mitch Trubisky? That's
not a good tree.
That's rotten fruit, my friend.
That's a bad tree. That's a very bad tree. Look, Kenny has grit. Kenny has tenacity. Kenny has the ability to pull off these magical, fourth quarter comebacks at times. The issue though is it's still, he doesn't seem to see the field the same way, and he is not willing to take the same risks at times. And some of that, yes, is learning. Remember, you used to never start rookie quarterbacks. They always sat for a year or two. Why? Because I don't want to use the percolate term because it's weird and it makes it sound like their brains are bubbling or something. But they did have to grow, right? It's different in the NFL. You have to be able to read the field better. You have to be able to read defenses. You have to be able to be quicker in your mind and your reads and adjust. And, Kenny has not shown that right now. Sure, some of that is Matt Canada. Absolutely. But for people who are blindly saying all of the negatives about Kennedy are Matt Canada's fault, you're wrong. Some of it is Kenny. Okay. For people who are saying Kenny sucks, Mason's the next coming, you're wrong. Right?
Yeah.
It ain't there yet. I'm not saying Kenny, at this point, I'm not saying Kenny is a better option than Mason Rudolph. I'm saying right now, Mason has shown that he is willing to do the things necessary for this team to move ahead. But I'm going to caveat this, right? I said he's got more of a gunslinger into him, right? Here's the thing. When a gunslinger has a bad game, it's god-awful bad, right? And so everybody's thrilled, right? The pass that George Pickens pulled out that I couldn't believe he caught, right? That that kind of throw, a throw where it's just like heave and hope. If he does that a lot in games, sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't. And if you got too many that don't work in a game, then you end up looking terrible, right? And all of a sudden, all of the Mason lovers will jump off that bandwagon in a heartbeat. I'm not predicting that for Mason, right? Again, I'm saying very clearly, he looked better in the last 2 games than he has in any other game I've seen him play for the Steelers, right? He looked cleaner. He looked like he was seeing the field better. He looked like he was making better choices. He looked like he trusted his support staff. He was standing in the pocket and reading what was in front of him. And he took risks, yes, but they seemed to be calculated risks. And out of the stuff that he did over the last 2 games, the only pass that I can really say is a heave and hope is probably that one I'm just talking about, right? He's under duress. He throws the ball. He puts it where only George Pickens could maybe get it.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's still a heave and hope pass.
Let me ask you that. That was not off his back feet like a one Mitchell Trubisky would have thrown. And do you think Kenny could have made that same throw? I wonder if there's a hesitancy with the arm strength. Because I still think I've
seen Kenny make some nice throws.
Yeah.
His accuracy is not consistent. I don't want to say it's bad. It's just not. He will make a throw that you're like, holy crap, that's a beautiful throw. Mm-hmm. And then the next throw or the next 5 throws are all over everybody's head by 10 feet, right? He's not consistent. When he is on and accurate and dialed in, he's great, right? But he's not most of the time.
And we saw that kind of even like when he first came in against the Jets. There was a lot of anticipation, really decent throws. One of the reasons he will get consideration is this isn't a guy like Zach Wilson that's out there fumbling, getting sacked, throwing picks.
Doesn't turn the ball over.
He wins games. He's got that intangible, we're going to see if Mason has that intangible. He just went to Seattle, loud place, hostile environment, team is a playoff situation because Seattle, that was a game they needed that they could not afford to drop either. And he went in there and for all intents and purposes got the job done. Like I said, he's made George Pickens look like a completely different player in just 2 games. They've run for 315 yards over these 2 games. Now, I don't think they will struggle to run like that against Baltimore. They'll probably still play Matabike and some of those guys as well. Like I said, Queen, if Smith's out there, that'll be rough too. But they're still going to need to run the ball. They can't rely on Mason maybe throwing the ball 40, 50 times. But even when Mason had, people go back and they have their ignorant statements about, losing to the Browns game. 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. He had over 315 yards. Had a lot of guys sitting, particularly on defense. You had the Lions game where there were 2 fumbles. Steelers just need to protect the football and not commit penalties, and that's been a lot of mistake-free football, not just coming from the quarterback, but from all around from a team perspective. If they have their heads screwed on straight, then they'll probably be rewarded by having to go to Miami if they should make the playoffs. So, which is never a good place to go. But Miami's got their own problems too. They just lost Chubb. Xavier Howard's hurt. Like they've got some of their own issues, which makes it concerning to see if the Steelers can actually squeak in and make it into that last spot.
No matter where they go, I don't know that it matters much if they're in the 7 or the 8 spot, right? They're not going to get as high as 5, so they're not going to host a playoff game. I don't think they have any chance of getting to 5. The Browns have locked that up, so the Browns are going to host that game, right? That wild card game.
Yes.
That means if they're in the 8 spot, right?
Well, there is no 8 spot.
What is it? 7, 5, 6, 7. Okay.
Yeah, 5,
7
6, 7
spot. If they're in the 7 spot.
Hold on a second. Hold on. You were begging for this before.
I was.
Yeah, I did not have this available.
Yay. Okay.
That's what Brian.
If they're in the 7 spot, then they go to Miami. Probably. Could be Jacksonville. Right? If they're in, probably can't. I don't know. See, this is where it gets too confusing because I don't know who's got to win.
It'd be Kansas City, Miami, Kansas City.
Yeah, Miami or Kansas City. So it's probably one of those 2 teams that they have to go on the road against. If they manage to get into the 6th spot, then they got to play Cleveland.
I'll take that.
I
At
would
Cleveland.
rather get the 6th spot, go to Cleveland, and play that game than the other two.
Could they jump that high in the list?
They can go to 6. They can get 6.
Let me see. Is there
They can't get 5. They can't.
No. The Browns have locked up
Browns
the
have
wild
locked
card
up 5.
spot, and Browns have what, 11 wins now, I believe. Yeah, hold on a second. I know what they are. It's it's just a matter of having it up on my screen at any given time. Yeah, they're 11-5, even be 12-5. We had the Browns winning 10-11 games in our preseason thing. What we didn't know was we didn't think that Baltimore was going to be as good as they were, and Cincinnati was the one that actually had the injury bug end up biting them. Let me see here. You got, in fact, if the Bengals, with Cleveland sitting and resting some starters, and the Bengals put up a fight against the Chiefs this past weekend. If the Bengals win this weekend, everybody in the AFC North, it's the first time since they had like a NFL West division in 1930 or 40 or something, old-timey leather helmets, that you would have every team in the division with a winning record, which would be insane. And we also contemplated if that was possible. The Browns, for the first time since 1989, will finish ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers, which we weren't so certain about. And I would wonder if you, regardless, playoffs or not, would you still consider, I'm still trying to find this information for you, Brian, but let me ask you this while I'm looking. Would you still consider this season to be a success? Because there's a lot of people who like to say mediocre Mike Tomlin and no losing seasons or anything. Did you see what he had to work with out there?
Here's the thing. I'm semi done with the it's a success because of these issues, right? Like, is this, I'm just going to forget, everybody has injuries. Do they have them to the same extent we did? No. Everybody has problems, right? Is this a successful season in my mind? No. And the reason I say that is we're struggling. It's not up to us. We'll have a winning record. Yay. But we're not the masters of our domain, right? We do not get to decide our own fate. We're reliant on other people for help. I don't get to go to a damn home playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a successful season, as far as I'm concerned. Now, that's right now. They get in and win and somehow manage to move forward. And I could change my tune completely, because you win the Super Bowl, it's a successful season.
There's
no other way
of
to look
course.
at it.
And nobody that does, everybody else is a loser, right?
Yes.
I'm
not in any way predicting that. I know Zach actually tweeted that out the other day. He's like, "Yep, Steelers are going to Super Bowl. I'm calling it right now." I'm not calling that. But you get in a dance, you never know what could happen. Is there a team that I look at in the AFC that I don't think they can beat? No. Everybody is susceptible this year. We know they can beat the Ravens. We know they can beat the Browns. They probably can beat the Bills. The Chiefs are certainly not the same Chiefs that we've seen. Miami is a little scary, but you said they've got their issues. They could beat Jackson. I mean, there isn't a team that I don't think they can win against, right? Even on the road. It doesn't mean they will, right? And they still have to play. This is like the season that they won the Super Bowl in with Bettis, right? 6th seed. They had to go, they were the bottom seed. They had to go on the road every game. They had to get there and all these. It's the same scenario, right? Except that they're not quite as good, and they have more problems than they had that season.
No, that's very true. And I just had the Steelers injury report up, and I think we had some new names added to it, by the way.
Oh, yay.
Najee Harris was a DMP, but everybody else was at least limited, including Minka Fitzpatrick and Landon Roberts, just as and a few others, TJ Watt and Larry Ogunjobi, days of rest. But with a knee, Najee Harris was added as a DMP, but Minka and Landon Roberts at least limited, maybe have some hands on deck. As for the playoff probability and in the hunt. I don't proclaim to know how exactly this works, Brian, but I'm not exactly sure if they could jump up into 6. I guess it depends on how just messy this
if the Jaguars
NFC South.
lose, right?
Yeah.
If the Titans beat the Jaguars, then they're 9-8, right?
Yes.
If the Bills lose, then they're 10-7.
Mm-hmm.
If the Colts, there's no way the Colts are going to lose or going to beat the Texans. I'm sorry, CJ's going to win that game.
Yeah.
So I don't think that one plays in as much. I think that the scenario, and under one of the circumstances I read, the scenario that gets him there is if there ends up being this weird amalgamation, 3-way ties at a certain record, and then their head-to-heads don't matter anymore, and they somehow they can get there. I've seen a scenario where they can get there, but like I told you, I think the only scenarios I haven't seen is that they can somehow get the first seed anymore. But
Yep, I agree with you. Well, I think we've hammered that about as much as we're going to hammer that for this episode. And I put a bow on it. I mean, just go out there and win and let the rest fall where it may. And then we'll start talking about next year's stuff, because I didn't really want to get into the Russell Wilson things, the Justin Fields things, the Michael Penix Jr. things. Like, I'm not going there just yet.
When we don't have any more games to look forward to, we can do that.
Yes,
I don't want
absolutely.
to do that until...
and hopefully we do have some football to look forward to. And Mason, we trust. At least I do. It does put a smile on my face to see him do all of these interviews and pressers and be the guy, even for this small streak, for as long as it took. I mean, just sometimes you never know. Look at Brock Purdy. It's just opportunity. Brock Purdy, Tom Brady, guys like that never get an opportunity unless that opportunity opens, and then you seize it. Right now, Mason is seizing it, and there may be an opportunity where the Ravens are playing a little more depleted, a little less foot on the gas, maybe a little more conservative, and maybe the Steelers can sneak away.
Just because we're known for this at this point, we're known for saying, "Okay, we're done, goodbye," and then we're not for another 15 minutes.
No, we got to put a bow on it.
I know. But let's say that Mason does a full Nick Foles impersonation. We beat the Ravens, and we take the road avenue to the Super Bowl, and he wins.
Uh-huh.
Let's say that happens.
I doubt it, but go ahead.
Yeah.
You've got my ear.
Say that happens. What do you do to keep Mason Rudolph a Steeler at that point? And do you then just say open competition? In fact, you got the lead over Kenny at this point. That's the scenario where the speculation of, is Mason the guy? If he makes this run, right? How do you supplant? Then the memes where it was like, this is Kenny, Kenny on the sidelines going when they're scoring touchdowns, and it's like, I just lost my job. That's the meme then, because that's the way he could lose his job.
I hate to tell you how that turned out for the Eagles. Foles right there.
Carson Wentz. Don't know? They're right over there.
Yeah, they ended up drafting Jalen Hurts. So,
yeah.
but
they went back to Carson Wentz, so they're idiots.
Save Mitch Trubisky gets cut. His cap savings is in the neighborhood of about $9 million. They're going to eat about $7 based on that contract that they redid. They should have just dumped them and saved 10.
Yep.
And we called for that. And they ended up signing Rudolph right before they re-signed Trubisky. Like, oh, you almost had it. You know what I mean? Like they weren't sure they were going to get something redone with Trubisky, and Mason was right in line to be that backup, and then it got yanked from him. And I surmise that the only reason Trubisky got as much of a leash that he did is because of that contract. You got to speak to ownership and everything else, because you made those. It's like, hey, guys, Art Rooney 2 comes down from, upstairs or wherever his office is. It says, hey, Mike, hey, Omar, why are we paying this guy what we're paying him if you're not going to play him? And that's a lot of the politics and the business end of football that ends up getting involved with this. And of course, they're not going to extend Mason much beyond, because whatever, if Mitch would have been playing okay, like next year, Kenny plays, Kenny is the first round guy. Why Mason probably isn't even around? You know what I mean? Probably wouldn't have been this year, maybe either. Who knows? And don't forget too, in this whole equation, Dwayne Haskins was supposed to be a guy that was involved in this mix before, rest in peace and everything. But he was part of this too. So they've tried some reclamation projects that were former first round picks. They've got one of their own. They got a guy who they had a first round grade on that they snagged later in that draft. Where Mason right now looks a lot better than a lot of those guys were taken, and people still wanted everybody to go get Sam Darnold or do well. I hate to tell you, but that's some conversations we're going to have this offseason, my friend. Happy New Year to everyone, wherever you're watching or where you're listening. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. This is the Steel City Underground podcast. And until next time, as we always do to close out the show, first of all, thank you, Brian, for joining us, as always.
Sure.
And
happy to be here.
Happy to be
here with my lack of mohawk and grizzly bearded face. Don't tell me I don't have a beard. I have a beard. I didn't shave the whole thing off.
Throw that in and be Santa Roach for next year. So there's an idea.
No, look, I went to my company holiday party, and the COO pulled me aside and she said, "I'm really disappointed." And I said, "What?" She goes, "Of anyone coming to this party, I thought you would dress as Santa." And I was annoyed by that.
You would be okay. Be Scrooge then, or the Bill Murray version.
I will happily go as the Grinch.
Yeah. Okay, that works. You're a mean one. Anyways, that'll do it for us, folks. Here we go. Saturday, 4:30 in Baltimore, M&T Bank Stadium, ABC, ESPN, nationally televised. And your last tidbit for the 2%ers, Brad Allen and his excellent referee crew that screwed up the call with the Detroit Lions and Dallas Cowboys last week gets rewarded with being on the spot. Not some game that's a throwaway like the Jets and Patriots. Oh, no. A game that might actually have playoff implications. He better not F this up. That's all I got to say. My name's Joe.
All right, I'm firing. I'm already pre-setting the GIF ready. I'm getting the GIF in a tweet as a draft ready for the refs stink to go out immediately.
Absolutely. Well, my name's Joe. His name's Brian. Until next time, folks, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.